Hello and welcome to Uncommon Law, my podcast about true stories from my life experience of over 50 years as a lawyer and trial judge. This is a look at the law from the inside out, stuff they don't teach in law school. This is Judge Rudy Greco, retired justice of the New York State Supreme Court. New York City in springtime is usually very, very welcome after our winters. And there are two sets of signs of regular nature and of human nature that will introduce spring. On the natural side, we have the robins, the daffodils, the snowdrops, little hyacinths popping up all over town. A lot of people in New York, as a city place, don't even notice that stuff. A lot of people welcome it and wait for it. The other thing is on the human nature side, there were two signs of spring. And one of them is the St. Patrick's Parade. And the other one was the Golden Gloves finals up until 5 or 6 years ago when he discontinued them. And there's a reason for that. St. Patrick's Parade, and New York is a tough place to live. Everybody's struggling. And St. Pat's, the Irish have been through their shares of struggle over the years. And all New Yorkers identify with that because it's celebrating struggling and overcoming difficulties. So a lot of people who are not Irish look forward to the St. Patrick's Day Parade. It's always a joyous occasion. And the Golden Gloves, also, New York life is a battle. And the Golden Gloves, we had kids from all different neighborhoods, of all different religions, races, ethnicities, and economic situations, competing in a, who gets to the top of the mountain of amateur boxing in New York. And that's a struggle. It's not easy to do that. But people used to look forward to it. I certainly looked forward to it. I was involved. I had been a Golden Glover myself. So we have all of that stuff. And boxing used to be mass entertainment. It was massively popular. It was one of the most popular, if not the most popular. Boxing and horse racing were the most popular sports at one point in time. And the Golden Gloves itself produced a lot of outstanding New York fighters. First of all, there was among them was Gene Tunney, who the heavyweight, who became a senator himself. Benny Leonard from Harlem, who was the greatest Jewish boxer of all time. Jake LaMotta, the Raging Bull from the Bronx, and Harlem's own greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time, undisputed best boxer ever, Sugar Ray Robinson. All of these people came from out of the Golden Gloves originally, so it was a very, very big deal. It had evolved. It started out years ago as a charitable thing to raise money for the boxing clubs for the youth, and it evolved into a big, big money proposition with three major entities taking part: the New York Daily News, which had an auxiliary proposition called News Charities, would run it, along with Madison Square Garden, which staged the finals and maybe the semifinals in some years, and televised them, filmed them, and televised it on and later on the MSG network, the sports network. And then the Metropolitan Amateur Boxing Federation, where I was counsel to that organization. And that's 53 amateur boxing clubs from New York City and the metropolitan area, Long Island and lower New York State, up in Westchester and Orange County and some of those places, Dutchess County. And they would stage this thing. Well, originally, it was sanctioned by the Amateur Athletic Union, the old AAU. And clubs, all the boxing clubs, were the direct beneficiaries of the charity. They would get the money. And then, as it grew in popularity, it changed. The New York Daily News basically took over the administration of it, and they ran it for business profit. They used it to reward their corporate advertisers with ringside seats and complimentary, all sorts of stuff. And the kids who competed, their families would get a couple of tickets in the nosebleed seats at the finals. And the advertisers, the big corporate people, would all be ringside. Madison Square Garden paid big money for the TV rights to the Daily News. And they pocketed that money. And they would then license the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals for broadcasting around the world. And so Madison Square Garden made pretty good money, too, from that. And the kids got the short end, and the clubs got the short end of the stick. Well, I was pro bono lawyer for the Metropolitan Amateur Boxing Federation. The president was a client of mine, Bruce Silverglade, who I introduced to Ira Becker, who owned Gleason's Gym, and the two of them became partners in Gleason's Gym. And Bruce was a lovely guy, and Ira has passed on since, and Bruce still owns Gleason's Gym, and he's a wonderful, wonderful guy. His father was the Olympic team manager for the United States Olympic team. Well, Bruce and I, we called a meeting of all the clubs and discussed, what was on the agenda and how we can improve the situation, how we could get better prizes and better transportation fees and better seats at the finals, all sorts of different things, and why we were getting short shrift. And we decided to approach the Daily News. And I was appointed counsel for the group. We had a small committee, just 3 or 4 of us. And so we contacted the two executives of the Daily News or Daily News Charities, or both perhaps, who ran the tournament. And one of them was a guy named John Campo, and the other guy's name was Mike Marks. And we contacted them. Now, the tournament starts in January, so we contacted them in October to get a jump on things. We didn't want to get in the way of the tournament, and we wanted to get the negotiations out of the way. Well, these guys were phony, because what they did was duck. And they were, oh, yeah, we'll get together. It was deny, delay, deny, all of this kinds of nonsense. In fact, their strategy was no deal, no way. That was their strategy, and they were hiding it. Finally, we forced 2 meetings, and we went to the news, and we had meetings where we were made, 3 of us, or 4 of us, as it were made to wait 1 hour each time in the hallway, like jerks, standing out in the hallway, and no progress came from the meeting, and these guys basically abused us. Well, negotiations as it were, it just didn't happen. We met those 2 meetings, and now we are into the tournament itself, which ends in around mid-March, as I said, and this is about 2 weeks, probably the end of February, 2 weeks before the finals. And we call, because we're getting nowhere, the Metropolitan Amateur Boxing Federation meeting in a big hall at the headquarters of the Queens Elks on Queens Boulevard. And it was a nice old building, and we had everybody there. And representatives from 53 clubs showed up. 2 or 3 people from each club came to the meeting. And I summed up our grievances. I spoke to everybody. And Mike Marks was there. He attended on behalf of the news. And he started to interrupt because he saw that we were getting a consensus. It was building. He saw trouble on the horizon, and they hadn't done anything. And when I recounted all the grievances, there was a lot of grumbling in agreement. People were pretty fed up. Marks tries to get up and says, I want to speak. And I said, you have no right to speak. Oh, the news is a member of this organization, and I represent the news. I said, well, where is your authorization from the Daily News that you're a spokesman that's authorized to speak for them? I said, and where is your membership? Where's your membership card in this organization? Again, came up blank. I said, Mr. Marks, you can leave the room. You have nothing to say here. I'm not going. I said, well, you are going. The question is, do you want to walk out or do you want to be carried out? And at that point, 6 guys got up spontaneously and surrounded him. He looked at them and he walked out, which was wise. Okay, they had been fed up with this nonsense now. So we locked the door, and a comic moment arose, and we continued the meeting. And a comic about 5 or 6 minutes later, somebody opened the door, and there was Mike Marks with his ear on the door and his eye in the keyhole, trying to eavesdrop on the meeting, which was a big laughing moment. And the worst thing you could do to a bully is to ridicule him. And everybody, he was the laughing stock. That whole place, about 150 people, just laughed out loud at him. And he was caught. He was totally embarrassed. And ridicule to a bully is like kryptonite to Superman. That's a great thing. Well, now that event was a catalyst because it was a role reversal. Instead of getting bullied and pushed around, we had the news on the run. And the Sleeping Dog, which was the organization, the Metropolitan Amateur Boxing Federation, or MABF, was now ready to bite. So I got up and I said, let's show our fighters a good example of standing up for their rights. At this stage of the game, we can stage the tournament finals because we know who the finalists are. There's no dispute here. We can buy the awards. We can stage it we can get another venue easily enough. There are plenty of big venues. And we can do this ourselves. We're going to take a vote. Well, we had a vote. 52-1. These people never agreed on anything. 52-1 in favor of calling off the finals and staging our own finals and removing the sanction. The only club to vote against was the Bedford Stuyvesant Boxing Club, because they were being treated specially by the Daily News, because that was the home of Mark Breland, who had won 4 championships at that time. He was a welterweight, a tall, skinny kid, lovely kid, came from a nice home, working class home in Bed-Stuy, but he had anesthesia in his fist. Mark Breland knocked everybody out. People think short, stocky guys are powerful in punches, but actually it's the tall, thin guys that, because of leverage, that hit hardest. And Mark was a knockout artist, and he was always on the back page of the Daily News and the sports pages. Breland wins another bout. Breland wins another. Mark Breland, KO artist, and for years and years. And he was going for his 5th title, so they got special treatment. Otherwise, we would have had a unanimous vote, which was miraculous with those guys, because they were all competitors, and they didn't like, a lot of the clubs didn't like each other. They had a lot of enmity there, too, among, the rivalry. All right, we walk out. We get phone calls. They want to meet at Madison Square Garden. The News in Madison Square Garden wants to meet at the offices of Madison Square Garden's executive spokesman was John F.X. Condon, who also was the PA voice of Madison Square Garden at the Knicks and Rangers games and the boxing matches. John F.X. Condon. So we go up there, and now we're talking about Tuesday preceding the finals on the coming Friday, 3 days away from the finals. We walk up there. We go to Madison Square Garden. John's very gracious. We sit down. He's a real gentleman. And we wait. And Marks and Campo are late. So we gave them the courteous New York 15 minutes, because traffic is traffic, and you have to do that. And everybody knows it's an unwritten rule in New York. And then we walked out. I gave the guys a signal. I said, that's it. We're out of here. And we walked out. I said, John, I'm sorry, but that's it. We walked over to Gleason's gym, and which is only a couple of blocks away from the Garden on 31st Street. And I told Bruce, I said, Bruce, we're going to hang around here. Let's stick around, because we're going to get a phone call. And sure enough, it wasn't 20 minutes later, we got a phone call. Who's on the other end of the line? The New York State Athletic Commission Commissioner, Jose Torres, who was former light heavyweight champion of the world and a noted newspaper columnist for the Daily News, and he wrote a couple of books as well. Jose, very bright guy, and he was a friend of mine, by the way. I knew him through Customato and Jimmy Jacobs and Wilfred Benitez, etc., etc. Okay, Jose said, Rudy, I'm in charge. He says, not only do I have to regulate professional boxing, but we have to oversee amateur boxing too, as the Athletic Commission chairman. He said, I wish you would come here, because this is bad for boxing in New York, and I would like you to come here. I said, Jose, I'll come. And he said, bring the committee. I said, we'll come out of respect, personal respect for you and for your office. I said, because I have no respect for these guys. They're abusive. They're just not good people. And I don't want to deal with them. But I'll come. I'll give you the courtesy of coming down there, just as I said, out of respect for you. Okay, so we deliberately killed an hour and a half waiting to leave Gleason's to go down to the New York State Athletic Commission offices, which are on Chambers Street, 270 Broadway, Chambers and Broadway. And we got there. Now it was 2 hours after we got the phone call. And we walk in, and Campo and Marks are fuming because we made them wait. But that was very, very sweet turnabout. We did that on purpose, and they got their just desserts. It was good. So now, no sooner sit down than Campo starts his BS tough guy act, calling us extortionists, crooks, hold-up artists, gangsters, you name it. And I put up my hand. He didn't go for 10 seconds. When I put up my hand in the open, stop, halt signal, I flashed my palm facing him. I said, that's it. He stopped. I motioned to our guys. We got up and started walking out. Jose Torres cut us off at the door. He said, no, please come back. Sit down. We sit down. He tells Marks and Campo, that's enough. You've said enough. I don't want to hear that crap anymore. Let's get down to business, he says. And I don't know why this has taken all these months to come to this point, right? 3 days before the finals, when this is getting squared away. But nobody's going to leave here until we settle this, or we do our darndest to settle it, okay? So everybody sit down. Well, I had the cards, and I knew it, and I increased all our demands by a large margin. We ended up with better prizes for the fighters along each stage of the tournament, ringside seats for a large number of people and their, friends and family, and realistic, generous travel expenses because the kids sometimes had to take 2 trains or a bus and 2 trains to go from wherever they lived in East New York up to the Bronx to fight in qualifying matches. And we did all of that, plus, and this was the big one, a share of the income from the TV production and the finals, which filled Madison Square Garden. As a result of the whole thing, the MABF gave me a plaque in gratitude, and I even got from Marks and Campo a little Big Apple lapel pin with the Daily News logo on it. There's an old box flash camera on there, which I wear as a badge of honor. And all of that was all well and good, the plaque, everything else. But the thing I'm most grateful about is that the knowledge that I taught the fighters how to fight. And by the way, John F.X. Condon himself became a longtime client of mine. Thanks for listening. Come back next week for another episode of Uncommon Law, lessons they don't teach in law school. I'm Judge Rudy Greco. Court is adjourned.